What happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? Hi, I'm Brent Cassity. Welcome to the Nightmare Success In and Out podcast, where we explore how to overcome your fears and nightmares and set yourself free. We're going to be exploring this topic with guys I was in Leavenworth with and others who survived their own nightmare. These stories can be inspiring, sometimes sad. There's some humor, but hopefully you can come away with a nugget of something that'll help you knock down some of the prisons you built up in your own mind. Welcome back, Nightmare Success In and Out listeners. This is where you come from. What happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? How do you adapt, survive, overcome, set yourself free? Hey, don't forget, folks, don't forget, follow, subscribe, like this thing up, share it out. It helps the show. It really does help the show. Not just saying that. I got to tell you, I'm always like blown away when I've got a guest like this because, and I've had a couple of guys on here and women who have had something happen to them when they were a teenager. And Keenan Hudson was 15 years old and he went to prison and was designated as an adult and served nearly 15 years. And and the other thing about this is this show goes into 1,100 prisons with a Dovo across the United States. And this is the type of story that I want these guys to hear, that he came out. He has become, an author of the Unspoken Truth and Life Story of Keenan Hudson. He's a motivational speaker. He's a musician. He's into music. He's a reentry strategist, and he's gotten into multiple businesses, and he figured it out. It wasn't easy. I don't want anybody out there to think that this reentry world is an easy thing. You just don't wave a magic wand. But if you have mentors and you listen and you put those things in place and really get things going, you can make it happen. And that's what Keenan's been able to do. I am so I'm really happy that he's here because I think this is going to be a really good show. I want to recognize show sponsor Autoplaza Direct. Who likes spending a couple of weekends walking car lots, looking for a car. Then you spend 4 or 5 hours in the dealership to buy a car. It's kind of like a root canal appointment. Well, there's a better way to take away all that pain and hassle getting a car. It's called Autoplaza Direct. They're your personal car concierge. Just tell them the car you want, what you can pay, and they'll go find that car for you. They'll negotiate your best price. They also offer you warranties and financing. It's all full service. Go to autoplazadirect.com to get started with your personal car concierge. It's the new hassle-free way, the car buying experience you deserve. Autoplaza Direct. Tell them Brent from Nightmare Success sent you. Keenan Hudson, welcome in, my man. How are you?
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. I'm well. Well, and yourself?
I'm doing good. We talked on the phone. We talked a little bit this morning. I really think it's incredible because I think the biggest question is like, oh my gosh, what happens to somebody who's 15 years old and serves nearly 15 years in prison? Like, can they be okay? Can they be okay? I mean, it's just, it's one of those, I can't believe that happens. And then your question is can he be okay? And you have figured out, Keenan, how to be okay. Yes. But can you take us back? Because this happened so early in life with you.
Mm-hmm.
What was going on in your world? What was Keenan Hudson doing as a kid growing up before 15 years old?
Wow. So growing up in the city of Philadelphia, I know quite sure that a lot of people probably heard about Philadelphia, about it being very ruthless and, a lot of drama, a lot of trouble, within the city, which is true. So me growing up, again, single parent household, my mom did the best that she could to raise me and my siblings. But me, I was just one of those like little black sheeps. I was I had ADHD, so I was hyperactive. I always was into things, got into a lot of fights in school and things like that. And a lot of that had to do with, especially not having a father figure around and things like that. My father, he was, on the street, strung out, on drug addiction. So I had to pretty much, figure things out on my own, from a street.
Siblings? You have brothers, sisters?
So yeah, I had a couple siblings. I had the brother and sister, and I had Eventually I had like a stepfather that came into play, but he wasn't really like a big role model or anything. But I had like step siblings as well. Yes.
So the stepfather, because that can always that can go two ways. You know, the stepfather thing was so that really wasn't a positive in your life.
Not necessarily. It was more like he was just there. So it wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm gonna keep you out of trouble. I'm gonna show you how to do this, show you how to do that. No, wasn't nothing like that.
So you're kind of in and out of trouble, getting in fights. I mean, at the age that this event happened for you, you would have only been like what, like a freshman in high school?
Yeah. So the crazy thing is I had went into high school. I've actually, when I was younger, I started school early.
Okay.
I was always a grade ahead of where I was supposed to be.
Okay.
You know, I never failed, thank God. You know, even though I got into a lot of trouble, I've never failed. So when I went into high school, I think I was like 12 years old. That's when my mom was actually diagnosed with cancer.
Oh, man.
I was a freshman. Yeah, I was a freshman in high school. And right after that, when she had passed away, it wasn't shortly until about like a year later. That's when I had a very life-changing event that happened in my life.
Wow. So you had a lot going on as a kid.
Yeah.
How did you take that at that age at 12, 13? Because that's really heavy stuff to hear that your dad's already not part of the picture, but your mom's sick.
You have broke up. I actually didn't hear the question.
That I just wondered, Keenan, at your age, at 12, 13 years old, your dad's out of the picture, and your mom has been part of your life, and then you hear that she's sick. How do you grasp that?
I actually can't even like really answer that question because it was like me being a mama's boy. That was nothing easy. That was not something I took lightly. You know, it was like, wow, like how do I get through this? You know, and see that the hurtful part about it is my family didn't tell me until the tail end. And how I remember it vividly was because they didn't tell me until about a few days before Christmas. She passed 3 days after Christmas on the 28th.
Wow.
So by them keeping a secret, me thinking she was sick, I'm thinking it was a sickness where it was like the flu. I thought she was going to get better and everything was going to be fine and dandy. Because I would ask her things at the hospital like, hey, can I get a motorbike or a motorcycle or a four-wheeler when you get better, this and the third? She would say, yeah, this and the third. And my aunts and them would laugh at me. You know what I mean? So these are the type of things when you reflect on, it's like, wow. So it was very devastating, to experience that.
So what happens to you at that age with your dad being out of the picture and your mom dies? Where does Keenan go?
So when my mom passes away, Keenan goes into like a frenzy of hanging around the wrong crowds, getting deeper into the streets, smoking a lot of marijuana, try to drink a little bit. Now, mind you, I'm a kid, barely 15 years old. And next thing you know, I wind up getting into actually a robbery homicide, robbery turned fatal. With some friends, so-called friends of mine, and I was barely 15 years old.
Walk us through that, because that has to be like a lot of these things when they happen like that, it happens so quickly. I mean, was it a blur for you, this robbery, and then how someone ends up dying?
Yeah, it's like you get around these friends, you're always contemplating and just want to do stupid things. But for the most part, even that very night, not saying that the act was appropriate anyway, and we wasn't supposed to be robbing anybody, but nobody was supposed to die. You know, we were just thinking, oh, we're just gonna take some stuff and we'll be on our merry way. But this so happened one of the accomplices that I was with had a gun. You know, he had a firearm on him, and we weren't supposed to use the firearm, but just so happened he had other plans in mind. And it's sad to say, which I regret each and every day, that the actual victim, he never resisted. You know, he gave up everything without any type of fight back or anything, and just so happened a co-defendant of mine wanting to be him, wanting to prove a point for no apparent reason, wound up taking an innocent man's life.
Wow. So you're there. This all happens, and what's the next thing that happens in that scenario?
So next thing you know, we dispersed. We ran our own separate ways. I wound up because my grandmom lived like around the corner, but I actually lived in another part of town. So I left my grandmama's house the next day. Actually, I went home that night. I went to my grandmama's house that night, which was around the corner, and I turned on the news, and actually it was on the news that, hey, there was a robbery turned fatal. The murderer is still on the loose, blah, blah, blah. So, of course, my heart is pumping like, wow. So throughout that whole night.
And you're what? Are you 14 or 15 at this time?
I'm actually 15, barely 15.
Barely 15.
Barely 15 years old. I had just turned 15 in January. This happened in March.
Okay.
This happened in March. So, from there, I wind up going back home, went to school and things like that. And, I tried to, play like everything was just cool, but then people started popping up rumors. Things started happening, like people started saying things. That's how I knew that individuals that I was with, these so-called friends, were talking. People were talking and things like that. So next thing you know, people were talking. Some neighborhood friends of my grandmother, word got back to her that I was involved in something like that. I was involved in what happened.
So your grandma hears about it.
My grandma heard about it.
She came to you?
Yeah, and well, she didn't bring it to me right away. It came like about a week or two later when I was back at home, because I tried to stay away from my grandma's house because of what had just happened. And I think she told my uncle, because my uncle was part legal guardian as well, along with my aunt. And then my uncle came and talked to me. But of course, I had to fake it off. No, I don't know what you're talking about. Things like that. And I see that when they noticed, I guess they probably thought I was lying. And what happened was they got me an attorney right away.
Okay.
Because they got to figure I was lying, because it was too much. From what he was saying, I could tell they wouldn't have knew those facts if it wasn't somebody that was there with us.
Yeah.
So obviously, it was put into somebody is saying something. You know what I'm saying? So, but like I said, I just still never said anything. Had the lawyer, they had got a lawyer and things like that, and and they kept trying to investigate, and next thing you know, I started knowing that that's when again, my so-called friends was giving me up, that I was a part of it. And mind you, it was 5 of us.
5.
There was 5 of us when this thing took place, and but somehow they kept, because my nickname is Biggs. Okay. They call me Biggie Smalls.
Biggie Smalls.
They would always call me, because that's how my name kept popping up. Because at first they didn't know my name. And they could say, yeah, the boy Biggs. My name kept popping up. So then eventually they wound up finding my name and things like that, and yeah, man, that's when it was like, wow, I'm actually going to prison at the age, you know what I'm saying?
Did they, when this was going on, I mean, obviously, it's being investigated, you've gotten an attorney. Did it end up being a situation where you just went and turned yourself in, or did they come in and do their thing?
So what happened was, they started doing their investigation. right? So things started like caving in a little bit. So I was on a run. I was pretty much on a run per se. So what happened was the lawyer had said, all right, listen. He said, they're after you, this, that, and the third. This is what they had, blah, blah, blah. So it was so much. And I even to myself, I'm thinking, even to my lawyer, like I'm lying to my lawyer when he's supposed to have my best interest at heart.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So I was thinking, I was like, wow. So all this stuff was going on. So they gave me the option. They said once they run your name and everything, because they got enough evidence to try to come and arrest you and things like that. They gave me the option. They said, listen, you can either turn yourself in or go on a run and allow them to try to, track you down and get you. So it just came over my spirit just in general. And I just said, you know what? I said, I got to just turn myself in. I said, I have to because I got to face it now because eventually I'm going to have to face it. Yep. So they actually, my aunt's uncle, they actually gave me the option. He said, which one you want to do? Do you want to turn yourself in or do you want to keep running? So I wound up turning myself in the courthouse. I think it was like in 2 weeks or the following week or something like that. Yeah, because I was in the lawyer office. I had a lot of family there, a lot of supporters that was there behind me because it was a big shock because a lot of people knew who my mother was from the community work she did. She was very influential. She did a lot of things for a lot of people. So they was shocked when I had got in trouble because I always used to be with her because I was kicked out of school a lot. So she, they was just real shocked because I wasn't a bad kid. I just got into some bad things. So, right. But that's what it led to. Mm-hmm.
So you turn yourself in, Keenan. I guess because these things can be really complicated. I interviewed a guy that ended up to be a huge story. These were teenage kids out in Malibu, and I think there was 3 of them. But at that time, they all got life without parole. Even though there was one person, but because they were there, they ended up getting the same length of the sentence. So these people you were with, I guess everybody ends up turning themselves in. Is that how that
actually? Yeah, no, actually what happened was, so of course, like you just said, so when people are together, even though one person may pull the trigger, everybody's still going to be considered a conspirator. So it's criminal conspiracy. So what happened was, so I got everything I'm saying right now is like verbatim from what's in my book. I actually have it in my book as well. Statements, affidavits, everything. Mm-hmm. So what happened was,
and you can get the book on Amazon, by the way.
On Amazon or KeenanHudson.com. Yeah. So what happened was, they got they had tracked the phone call back to a person, which was one of the people we was with. He started spilling the beans, right? So that led to him having immunity.
Wow.
He had immunity because he was giving up a lot of the tape.
Yeah.
That led to the shooter getting arrested. And the shooter's brother was giving up tape as well. So it gets real in the detail. That's why I laid out my book the way I had to lay it out. So that led to him getting arrested. So all this is going on. I'm still on the run. A lot of stuff is going on right now. I'm still on the run. So it wasn't until the shooter got arrested, he started giving up tape. Everybody else started giving up tape, which led to them. Yeah, it was Biggs and Marty, blah, blah, blah. So I was the last person that they had the interest in coming to arrest, even though they wanted the main 2 people.
And they had them.
Right. They wanted the person that set it up, which was me, and they wanted the person that pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
And that was the shooter, my other co-defendant.
So
the 2 had got away. The other 2 they let because they really wasn't concerned.
It wasn't a big deal for them.
It wasn't a big deal for them because they were like lookouts and this, that, and the third. They wanted the people that was up on the person, which was me and him.
So was your thought at that time, because you'd had this attorney, Keenan, was it your thought that you were going to go to trial? Was it your thought that I need to try to figure out the best plea agreement I can get? What was going through your mind?
So being ignorant towards the law and everything, because the code of the street is you don't tell, you don't do this, you blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And with the lawyer, I knew he had, because there was times where I knew he had like my best interest at heart, and he was a good lawyer, because there was times where I went to court and I would be like on the elevator going towards the courts, and there'd be other city officials will be really tilting their hats. So I'm like, oh man, you got an awesome lawyer right here. Like just in general, just out of nowhere. And so they would talk. He would always talk about me. He was saying, we know we're not going to beat this case. He know, like, far as going to trial and all that. He said you can forget about that. If you want to go to trial, you got to find another lawyer. Mm-hmm. So when he said that, I was like, so what are these options? Like, what's going on? He said, well, everybody's pointing the finger at you. So it was a situation where it was like, damn, how they pointing the finger at me? I wasn't even the shooter, this, that, and the third. But that's what they were trying to do. They were trying, because some of these cats I didn't even know. Some of these guys I didn't even know over a whole month span. Like I didn't even know them all like that. We just got together, we clicked, things like that, and wanted to do heinous crimes. Mm-hmm. So he was saying, he was like, look, because at first they was talking about giving us all the death penalty, because it was a capital case. The man was shot in the head. They was talking about, well, if they didn't give us the death penalty, they'd give us life in prison. Mm-hmm. Especially if we took it to trial and things like that. So just so happened, fortunately, like around that time, they had just passed a law and said they can't sentence the juveniles to death anymore. Mm-hmm. So that immediately, erased, the death penalty. But life is still on the table. So it was on KYW and the news stations and newspapers. Mm-hmm. And it just so happened they were giving up tape and things like that. So then that led for me, the lawyer said, listen, you could enter this guilty plea, because they threw a term up there for 12 and a half to 25 years. They said, listen, you plead guilty to this. Now he said, right, he said, now they're pointing the finger at you. He said, but part is because it was a negotiated guilty plea. He said, a part of this negotiated guilty plea is either you plead guilty, and if worst case scenario, if we have to go to trial, you will have to testify against them. So now that was a big thing. Like I'm thinking, like, whoa, this is something serious. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you hear all, the stories, stitches get stitched, blah, 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 this, that, and the third. But here it is. These people are telling on me.
Right.
And they're lying. They're actually lying on me. You know what I'm saying? Yep. But now, so then now I'm court like in a, you know what I mean? So now you battling the peer pressures. No, the street says do this. But then you look at, well, what's morally right? Like if people are saying you did something that you didn't do, even though you were involved in it,
right?
Why would you just sit back and just take that blame? Right. Oh, I'm a gangster. Would you proving yourself to the streets? Proving the individuals around you that you're something that you're not? Mm-hmm. Absolutely not. So I had to enter that guilty plea to 12 after 25 years. So now in my mind, okay, at least you're going to see the light of day again. You know what I'm saying? But of course, you couldn't really understand it at that time. But doing 12 years, you only 15, you coming home in another, I've been down 2 years by that time. So you coming home another 10 years, you're still going to be young. You're still going to have a whole life ahead of you. You know what I'm saying? So I wound up pleading guilty to 12 after 25. And actually, my co-defendant, he actually pleaded guilty as well. So, and then the other one that had immunity, he stayed on the streets. So I wound up, we all entered guilty pleas.
Wow. Well, it's a lot to think about, though, Keenan, at that age. First of all, you're 15 years old. That's an age where you're figuring out, how to be a freshman in high school, and then next year's sophomore and then juniors. Yeah, it's just heavy stuff, because you're now looking at, I'm going to grow up in prison. I'm going to grow up in prison. I want to get into all that, about how you handled being that age, going into a man's world in prison. Before we do, I want to recognize, a lot of us don't like how we show up online. And a lot of people think that there's no hope when it comes to managing your reputation online. Well, there is hope. It's called the Discoverability Company. And Drew Chapin is the guy that can help you out. He knows how to do it. And it's whether you're building your reputation from scratch, you're repairing your search results from a negative news story. And its discoverability can also help you how you're portrayed on popular AI services like ChatGPT. To learn more, visit discoverabilitycompany.co. They're even launching a do-it-yourself option, a course for individuals who want to take on their search results on their own budget and speed. Listeners of Nightmare Success can take $100 off the DIY SEO course with coupon code Nightmare Success. And Nightmare Success podcast is sponsored by the White Collar Support Group, the world's first support group devoted to people navigating the white collar criminal justice system. I'm a member of the White Collar Support Group, and I can tell you this is a bunch of people who help each other through the criminal justice journey for free. Whether you're just starting your journey or you've made it through to the other side, this is a great space for you. Join us on Zoom Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern. For information, go to prisonist.org, prisonist.org, start here. So, Keenan, you get in, you do your plea. You know you're looking at 12 and a half to 25. You end up, and I'm sure at this time, while you're in all this, you're also in jail, which is a horrible place. Probably the worst place for all of us who've been there. It's the very bottom of the barrel before you get to go to prison. What are you thinking as a 15-year-old kid walking, knowing that you're going to be entering this world where you're a kid?
Yeah, I like, it's one of those things, when you're a kid and, sometimes you think about it, but then it's like, hey, you in here, sometimes, you get in fights and stuff like that. But when it came to me going upstate, and I'm gonna tell you a quick story where I knew that, like this is gonna be real, and you gotta get your act together. One time, we had went to court. A lot of us go to court at one time, like on the cell block or whatever. We had went to court, and we were down. It was CJC in Philadelphia. And what happened was, they put us all in the cell, and so in these cells, all the cells were like glass, see-through, so you could see people in other cells. So our specific cell was a juvenile cell. So you seen some people that were upstate in other cells and things like that. So just so happened the people that was upstate in the other cells, we were cracking jokes at them. Hey, you old head, you ain't nothing. Yeah, that's why you upstate. You ain't going home and blah, 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 blah. We cracking jokes. Like as kids. That's how kids do. We cracking, doing stupid things. So just so happened, real big old head, real big guy. Now that upstate, when you see a cell from upstate, that mean they're appealing their cases. They down here trying to get sentences back and things like that. We don't know them. Old head came on the door. Boom, 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 boom. He started hitting the glass. Yo, let me at him. Get that big boy over here. He talking about me. Get him over here. He talking that trash. Put him over in the cell. He telling the sheriff. Put him over in the cell. Boom, boom. I'm talking about he making noise. Boom, boom, boom. And the sheriff had to come over to us and join. He like, yo, man, what is y'all doing? Why y'all over there tormenting these cats? Y'all not supposed to be doing that, man. He said, y'all don't know who these cats are, man. So then he was like, yeah, you say you playing with these cats, man. He said these dudes got life sentences, and some of them, he said even some of them are booty bandits, man. He said, man, y'all need to chill in here, man. Even y'all chill out, man, for real. So then he told us to chill out and all that. I'm like, nah, man, forget them old heads. We acting like we big.
Yeah.
So we chill, we laid back and whatever. So about 10 minutes later, about 20 minutes later, the sheriff came knock on the cell. He was like, Hudson, it's time for you to go to court. Like, you gotta go to court. I'm like, all right, bet. Let me see what's going on up here. So I went out the cell. He took me over to the old head cell where the old heads was at and opened the door. He's like, yeah, go in there. The old heads and them came to the door. I said, no, don't put me in. No, I don't want to go in there. No. They was pulling my shirt. No, go in there. No, you was talking. Oh man, the whole CJ, everybody saw it. And I was like, no. And that, from that day forward, that's when the sheriff said, see why? He said, I'm telling you, he said, that's the reason why you treat people the way you want to be treated. Don't torture somebody or think you could get away with tormenting people behind like walls as if they're an animal, because they never go and forget faces. He said, you got to remember, you about to go upstate. You about to go to the very same place where they're at. You know what I'm saying? And then I was thinking like, dang. So you're right, man. I apologize, man. This won't happen again. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, they laughed at me. Everybody was laughing at me, but it was at that point forward where I said, yo, you never tempt or torment somebody behind a wall thinking that you could get away with it. Because people, you never know what can happen. Tables can change real fast. He said that man has 3 life sentences. Plus he's a booty bandit. You know what I'm saying? So he was schooling. So the sheriff was schooling me. I was like, man, after that day, I said I will never disrespect or get in anybody's business ever again.
That's a good point.
Yes, sir.
Something to live by.
Yes, sir. Yep.
So, Keenan, you go to where you're upstate. You go to this big prison. I guess in the state systems, you've got. Were you in the maximum? What they would categorize the maximum?
Yeah, so when you go upstate, especially in Pennsylvania, you got to go through a couple jails. So the first jail you go to is Graterford, which is a maximum. But when you're juvenile, they'll let you go there, but then they'll throw you in a hole till you go to the next jail, which is like Camp Hill, to get you certified.
Okay.
You got a classification jail on the way. So you go through the classification jail, and then they put you in another one. So I've been through the maximum, but then I went to like a mid security. Mid security, I wound up transferring because I went to Pine Grove, and then went from Pine Grove, and then I wound up going to Retreat. So that was like a minimum. So throughout my bid, I was at different prisons, and then I wound up even going to Virginia State Prison as well. So long story short, but going in there, being around there, mind you, I'm around a bunch of grown men.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
I'm curious what your mindset was, because I can't imagine. I went in at 47 years old, Keenan.
Yeah. Wow.
So I was considered like an old OG,
Yeah.
But at 15 years old,
yeah.
What are you thinking? Like, you just had that experience in the jail, which actually is a wake up call. But walking in, knowing that you're with grown men in a world that you have not lived in, what were you thinking?
I was just I don't know, man. It was just more so like, wow, like this is really it.
Yeah.
Thank God. Even though I was naive in a lot of ways, because a lot of us kids are.
Sure.
We don't really know how to rationalize and things like that. But I was just there. I was there. Thank God I didn't have any problems or troubles. Of course, trouble could present itself at any time. But I wasn't terrified or scared. Like, oh my God, something that never did cross my mind.
Did you?
I was a big guy. Yeah. Plus, I was a big guy. At that time, I was about like 6'1", 15 years old. So mind you, I'm 6'7" now. So I grew a lot, but I was already big for my age at that time because I played football for But so it didn't really dawn on me like I would be like, oh my God, something's gonna happen. So but even prior to that, me getting the grasp of education, even before I came upstate, I was implored to, hey, listen, go get your education, whatever educational things that they have for you up there, take advantage of it, sign up for everything. And that's what I did. So I had that mindset, like, look.
Who told you to do that?
So a couple of people, the sentencing judge.
Yeah.
He's actually, the crazy thing is, I think I have my book right here. He's actually the sentencing judge told me he's actually one of the actual, if you see Judge Lerner,
Yeah.
You're right there at the top.
Uh-huh.
He's actually one of the people that actually told me, said, listen, you go upstate, you don't allow this to define the rest of your life. Take advantage of things, actually Mr. Hildebrand Pelzer, he's a principal out of the city of Philadelphia. Actually one of the head directors now. But they employ me. They say, listen, you go there, you develop yourself, you find yourself, you try to, become as much as you can, because you still have an opportunity to come out and make a difference in the world.
So that was your strategy. You were already thinking that when you were going in. Yeah.
I was thinking it. So I was thinking, especially after, like I said, my little experience down in the county. I went through a lot down in the county in general, especially with the court case and stuff, how that was turning out. It was a lot of stuff, a lot of fights, a lot of stuff going on. But then when I went up there thinking that, like, yo, look, take advantage. And that's why. So then I started signing up, getting into things. And that's how things started, just coming to me.
So Keenan, you started working on that and started taking advantage and educating yourself. In the grand scheme of things, when you're dealing with that much time, I was sentenced to 5 years, so there's no comparison to what you had. How did you do your time? Did you think about how long that was, or did you just do, this is fall? this is winter.
So time is a little bit, time is not weird, but it's one of those things where you do the time, you don't let the time do you.
Right. And you get in routines.
Yeah, so you get in the routines. I played every sport except baseball. I didn't like baseball. But when it came to basketball, football, volleyball,
yeah,
man, I'm talking about everything, you name it, weightlifting, things like that, track, aerobic, walking. Yeah. I was always in the mix of things. Plus, I was going to school, I was studying, and I'm going to the library. So when you're doing time in there, because those things are so repetitive, time doesn't become time no more.
Yeah,
that's why I was telling people out here. I said, a lot of people look at a year and think it's a long time. But to us in prison, it's only a month. It's a month to us. That's why we can wait so long to get serious in a relationship out here, or we can wait so long to do whatever we want to do. It's because time is not a factor. We done mastered time already. You know what I'm saying? So,
well, the other thing that I find interesting about those type of time, the amount of time like you got, people can choose one or two things with that. They can cut themselves off from the rest of the world, or they stay plugged in so they don't lose themselves the rest of the world. How did you handle that?
Repeat that question, please. I'm sorry.
Well, a lot of people, when they have a lot of time, choose to just cut off the rest of the world, so that it hurts too much to think that there's that all going on out there. Other people do the exact opposite, where they stay plugged into the outside world so they don't lose contact and can feel like they're plugged in. I'm curious, like with your length of time and the age that you were, did you stay plugged into the outside world, or did you just do it all on the inside?
I did a lot on the inside. Even though I had family here and there that were there, but sometimes, especially during time, when at the beginning of the bid, a lot of people will be there, around the first 2-3 years. But after that, after you hit a 5-year mark, if you still got people riding, like, I don't know what it is, probably somebody new. Yeah. But usually, you get burnt out within that time frame. So a lot of my stuff, did stay from me being plugged in the inside. Yeah. So that's why when I came home, a lot of things were like a little foreign to me, because it was like you lost contact.
I'm curious, Keenan, like, I saw people, because I was in a minimum security prison, but I did see people get freaky when they were getting close to the door. I saw, guys put hands on COs and get more time and all that. Because the total amount of time you were in was nearly 15 years, but when did you start thinking about getting out? Like, and when you started thinking about getting out, what did you think about getting out? Because it'd been so much time that passed.
So usually, again, when you're doing your time, when I'm doing the time and I'm involved in a lot of things, eventually time does creep up. Like, whoa,
Yeah.
no, you see pre-parole next year.
Yeah.
So of course, when you're doing the whole pre-parole parole process, that's like a whole 2-year period. You're prepping. So now it's like, look, we're not going to do too much of these sports no more. We're not going to do too much. We're not going to be getting involved because now you're focusing on that big day of of getting out there. Because just getting released is just that's just the beginning of everything. You know, but surviving out here is another thing.
Yeah.
So me understanding, asking people questions, how was it, out there in the world? Because some people have been there numerous of times, back and forth.
Right.
So I like to learn. I was the type of person where I like to learn from other people's mistakes. Even though I was educated with a lot of different things, got my diploma, a bunch of trades and a lot of college, credits and things like that, which was cool, but that doesn't equate to how you live real life.
Right.
Out here, especially going away as a kid. So that's a bigger setback. You went away. Now it's a difference between, like you said, you went in your 40s, so you can leave tomorrow and you know how to get things back because you already lived life. You understand what's going on out here in the world.
Exactly.
You know how to go wrong.
Yeah.
You know how to, if I need to get a house or if I need to write it. Yeah, but when at 15, what the hell do I know? I don't know anything. So
you didn't have any driver's license.
Yeah, so that was the biggest. That was one of the things because and this is very where a lot of people get. I'm gonna share something that a lot of people they get a little misconstrued, but there's no excuse. So what happened was I went in at 15 years old. Right. So everything went on pause. That was out here in the world.
Right.
Even though I learned and I grew up to be a man in prison, when the doors were open, everything went on resume.
Oh.
So now the only thing I remembered was 15 mentally.
Right.
So when you come home and you get on the bus and you driving past an old high school, I wonder if my friends still go there.
Yeah.
Hold up. You grew up. People have kids now. Nobody's your age no more. Nobody's 15 no more. No, people are then at 30 years old. And so then now it's like you had to check yourself. Whoa. Yeah, it's not the same. But what you remembered, that's the resume part.
That's the stuff that was you're jumping 15 years ahead. Yeah.
Exactly. So when you look at a lot of individuals that went to prison, in and out of prison, in and out of foster home, they never had a chance to grow up.
Right.
So that when you see them come out here, when they catching these cases, they touching these kids, or they're catching rape cases, things like that. That's for the simple fact that they never received that type of help, therapy, anything for them to cope with that type of not necessarily distress, but illness in a way.
Yeah.
Because that illness, being stuck in time, it could become an illness because your brain never developed.
And the thing one thing I love about this show is that there's a lot of people listening to this that are in prison.
Yeah.
And I mean, I want to make sure that everybody who's listening that are on the inside know that it's not easy getting out, but it's not impossible getting out. And I really want to talk about that, Keenan, because for whatever reason, I don't know what it was, but I want to know from you what it was, but you didn't give up on how hard it is. And how did you start stepping through that whole thing?
Far as when I returned to society?
Yeah. Because it's not stepping into that world. Because immediately, it's 2/3 go back in 3 years and 3/4 go back in 5. And you didn't go back. And you were a kid that grew up in prison, and you were, like you said, you were pushed back out, and everybody else has got the 15-year head start. How did you do it?
So it all started, like we were just mentioning, it started from being in there, it was a mindset thing. Like even for me, going to see the parole board, I had to draft up actually a parole packet that actually was named. I actually named it the self-coach reentry plan. Something I'm actually going to be turning into a book.
I like that.
There's actual But this actual paper I actually typed up while I was in prison right here.
Wow. Okay.
The self-coach reentry plan. So I had to draft this up, which consisted of an index. It gave me so many different things, like where was my home planning going to be, different things. Even though things were going to be subject to change, that was my main automata. So, and by that time, I had like a little support at the end from a pastor.
Okay.
That I had knew, because by this time, I was developing a good spiritual conscience and things like that with my beliefs. And I reached out to a pastor and said, listen, I said, look, I'm coming home, man. And, I'm not asking for any handouts or anything, but, if you can, because he'd been through the same situation.
Okay.
He'd been through federal prison. He got, he was incarcerated for a bunch of kilos of cocaine and stuff like that. And I shared with him my story. And he knew me from when I was a kid. So long story short, he said, all right, I'm going to work with you through your transition. So thank God he was able to provide. Yeah, that was a huge step, because what happened was he fronted the money for me to get a basement efficiency. So I didn't have to go to a halfway house, even though I was anticipating going to a halfway house, because I knew that my living quarters, like where I covered, I know I didn't get completely into my story, but it's in my book, where my mom, when she passed away, she left her house to me and my brother, but my aunt wound up losing the house. But all this stuff was happening while I was in prison. So mind you, I didn't have anywhere to come home to except the halfway house. But I was prepared to start from the ground regardless. So he provided the money for me to move into the basement efficiency, which was cool. Wasn't much, but it was something. I didn't have to be around a bunch of people and stuff like that.
Right.
So after making parole, coming home to a home plan, I had to work that money off, though, through the daycare he owned, through the church. It was a church/daycare. I had to work that money off. I worked the money off through employment. I never had any bad debt or anything with it. And then from there, as I moved on, I started getting involved. Like I started seeing other jobs, but I stayed focused though. Like I wasn't trying to chase this girl, that girl, and all that. No, I was like, nah, you gotta stay on focus. Your focus is important, because nobody is gonna pay your bills. So then, this time I was making minimum wage. This was like $725, $800. But at that time, my rent was only $600, everything included. So it was kind of like a plus. It was a blessing. You know what I mean? So I was getting everything paid. It wasn't, even though I had to walk in the snow, I had to walk in the rain, cold night, but that's just what it was. I knew things were going to get better.
Yeah.
So then from there, I found other jobs.
Well, I think, Keenan, you said a couple of things there that I don't want to just gloss over. Number one, you were smart enough to connect and have a mentor that you knew could help you. And then you went ahead and humbled yourself to ask for help. And you've got to be able to, I think, having a mentor, having somebody that is looking to help you, but you asking for help. And like you said, you're not looking for a handout, just a hand up. And that's what he gave you. And the other thing is that knowing that things were going to get better, that was your mindset, because you didn't know that things were going to get better. You just knew if you continued to work your plan that things could get better. So those two things are really big things when you get out. They're huge. Seeking somebody that's there and they want to help you, but you can ask for the help. And secondly, knowing that things are going to get better. Take that job. It might not be the job that you want, but it's going to be the beginnings to connect more dots and more opportunities. I think those two things are huge, what you just said.
Yeah, and they're very huge, right? Especially when you think about mentorship, because you got to remember, and just because you do have a mentor, that doesn't necessarily mean that everything is going to work out.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? You may have a mentor for different things. You may have a mentor for spirituality. You may have a mentor for your finances. You may have a mentor for different, parts of your life.
Right.
And just because, again, just a lot of people like to say, oh, yeah, well, my girl or my baby mom going to let me come live with her, this, and the third. Well, just be prepared to know that you're going to obey by their rules if you're going to live with them.
Right.
Like, but see, people sometimes don't see that. So again, but having that, like you say, that mentorship and a plan, that can help out a lot, a whole lot.
Yeah, and you've actually written a book on your plan, on your home plan. So, I mean, you've given a lot of thought to it.
Absolutely.
those are things that I think are really important for people as they step out, because I think there's some part of that too. Because everybody I talk to, this is the 168th interview on this show. Everybody I talk to talks about how hard it is for reentry. And I don't care where they come from. I don't care if they were, at the top of the food chain on Wall Street, or if they went in for some drug crime, or if they had some kind of violent situation. Everybody, because the idea of prison is horrible. The idea of living prison is horrible. But the reentry part of it, I think that people don't think that they have to prepare as much as they have to prepare for what they're going to have the right mindset coming into it and stepping through it, because there's so many barriers, and that's okay. We're okay with the fact that but knowing that there's barriers and that you can step through it is what you got to, like, the reason I wanted to not just gloss over what you said, you knew things were going to get better. You didn't factually know that. You believed it. You had hope that it would, but you had a plan that you were going to continue to keep stepping into your plan. And that's golden nugget stuff.
Yeah.
Wisdom.
And that's what it is. And then, like you say, you got to keep pressing, because even when I came home, like I say, working for minimum wage and all that, you could feel like, dang, that's not much. But eventually things, again, got better. You started venturing off other places. And see, at this time, I had certain skills. So being so I knew music, I understood how to play the piano, read it, write it. I started doing my own little teaching courses where I was teaching people how to play, kids. I was teaching a lot of kids, and plus I was playing at different concerts that compensated me as well. So, but then from there, going to other jobs, where I was making, minimum wage, but then, eventually I started making almost 100,000 a year, and that was just from my persistence and my dedication towards workplaces. Now, eventually, I mean, over time, you may say to yourself, well, I know for at least me personally, I can't do a 9 to 5. I mean, I'm not saying now I had to. Now, if I have to, I have to.
Right.
But everybody, and 9 to 5 is not really built for everybody.
Yeah.
Some people are meant to be their own boss. Some people are meant to be in entrepreneurship. But then some people are not meant to be in entrepreneurship. Some people are meant to have jobs.
Right.
So a lot of that, like I said, a lot of things went on, but I noticed that even when I was at like certain pinnacles of employment, some of the best times of my life is when I left away from it. Because then I started developing and learning, like, okay, I experienced life. So what are my options out here? Wow, I could publish a book. I started looking at YouTube videos where I was seeing people live certain lifestyles, and I was thinking, like, well, how can people afford this type of stuff? And that's when I started learning more and more about, not just credit, but then understanding, what it was to, financial freedom and things like that. Of course, that stuff came over time. So, but that's what allowed me to branch out and be like, wow, so this is what life is about. You know what I mean? But this was something I had to first live. I had to live a little bit
to know what you wanted.
To know what exactly. Like, I had a doctor actually laugh at me. A doctor I used to work for. He laughed at me, like, oh, it took you 5 years to try to figure that out. Yes, it did.
Yeah, it did.
I don't know. You know what's out here in the world. You don't know what's out here.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You won't know everything within a matter of 5 years. You won't know everything. It's impossible.
Right.
Compared to somebody's 20 years. Like you said, you went in at 40 something.
Yeah.
I went in as a kid.
Yeah.
Now I could tell you more about prison than you could probably tell me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? About anything in there. So again, it's but it's like that though, man. And some people have a hard time understanding that. That's why you got to be very patient.
So where you are now, let's talk about where you are now, because I know you do a lot of different things. You got your music, you're an author, you speak, you got businesses. What kind of businesses are you into?
So different businesses. Like I say, still dealing with the actual. Still dealing with the music business. Like, I do a lot of things with that, with the freelancing. I'm a partner in transportation company. We're all over GPS transportation out of the city of Philadelphia, but we're willing to commute anywhere in the country. Like I said, I did a lot of rental car service as well, but I actually pulled back from a lot of that because that's, again, even though you can have multiple businesses, sometimes some businesses are going to succeed more than others.
Well, sure.
Some businesses, yeah. Some are going to have your hands in more than others.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a time where you may think like, oh yeah, I want all these businesses, but sometimes you got to let certain businesses go. And that's just part of life. Like, it's okay to start over.
Yeah.
It's okay to struggle for a minute. A lot of people don't understand when we're dealing with entrepreneurship, you don't want that feeling. It's better off having a job, because sometimes, being an entrepreneur, that number one guy or whoever it is, you got to sell a dream regardless.
Exactly.
You're going to have to, put on a facade regardless. Even though you're about to go out of business, you got to put that smile on regardless. So again, this comes with learning and understanding life. So yeah, getting into that. I do my book sales. I'm motivational speaker. I'm speaking a lot of places.
I love that you speak to the youth. I love that you take your experience and go back and use I know you're a good speaker. I've went online and saw different things that you do.
Thank you.
You bring a lot of energy, a lot of positivity, but I think the thing that's so impactful is that your story is one that these kids can understand and believe because you've walked it, you've lived it, and now you're on the other side saying, hey, look at me. Look at all the things that I have, and I'm telling you. And I think that's so powerful.
Steve, I appreciate that. Yeah, and that's what it's for, man. That's how we overcome, man. That testimony, man. That testimony is one of the ways you overcome. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Keenan, the craziness of your life, the craziness of, I didn't know, the one thing I didn't know after doing all this research, I did not know that you lost your mom, at the age that you lost her. And then right after that, you end up going to prison. But taking all that in and where you are now, what do you think's your biggest takeaway through everything that you've been through, that for those that are listening?
Wow, the biggest takeaway from everything, man, is that I noticed that everybody in this world has their own unique journey. Nobody's the same. The way things worked out for me may not work out for you that way. The way things worked out for you may not work out for me a certain way. Even though we can relate in a lot of different ways, we still have our own journey to walk. So it's up to us to dig down into our own consciousness, our own spirituality, to figure out who we are. And again, that doesn't come overnight. That comes with trial and error. It comes with bumping your head a couple times. It comes with learning. But at the same time, comparing ourselves to others and trying to be where they're at, it'd be like just digging your own grave, because it'll never happen. So for the most part, finding yourself and learning what it is you were called to do in life is the most important thing.
That's powerful.
I think is my takeaway.
No, I knew you'd have a good takeaway, Keenan.
Sure.
I knew you would, and that is a spot on. If everybody would live with that and plug that in, yeah, I love it. Well, talking about gratitude and everything else that comes with our experiences, I want to give a shout out to Homestead Financial Home Mortgage here that lets me use this studio and all the fancy equipment here. If you've got home mortgage needs, Greg Aftiev is your guy. So we've got books here. We've got the Unspoken Truth and Life Story of Keenan Hudson. We've got Brent Cassity, Nightmare Success. We've got, if you want to check out the Reentry Connect Podcast, check out Keenan Hudson on that. Reviews, go to Apple, leave us a review. That'd be great. And if you want to know about me more, BrentCassity.com. I spell it wrong. It's with a T-Y, not a D-Y. As I used to say to my people writing my emails back and forth from Leavenworth, stay strong. I'll do the same. Keenan Hudson, thanks so much, man, for being a guest. You're the guy, man. You're an inspiration, and I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. I appreciate it.
No problem. Appreciate you too. And I can't wait to have you on my podcast as well.
It'll be good. It'll be good.
Be great. It's going to be great. I appreciate everybody, like you said, tuning in. Don't lose hope. Keep your heads up, and always look to better yourself each and every day.
Love it.
And yeah,
Love it.
mm-hmm.
Success in and out.
Indeed.